Good morning, class. Unfortunately, me and Miss Nava will not be able to attend class today, but we still left this video for you, for the substitute to show to you so you can still learn about solving and graphing absolute value equations.
So the substitute should have passed a packet out with 3 sheets and a construction paper. Everyone will have a different color. And on the sheet, on the top left-hand side, you should see a sticker with a number on it. Please remember your number, and as we will be using this later in the lecture.
All right, so for today's agenda, we will start off by working on the anticipation guide and KWL that we have used in previous lectures. Then we'll move on to reviewing how to solve equations, and then review absolute values in general. And then we'll start with learning how to solve equations with the absolute value equations.
From this, we will be going over to graphing absolute value equations and working in class, doing some classwork, and then having a class discussion of what you have learned and a recap. And of course, don't forget homework.
All right, so we start off now by getting the first sheet in your packet, which is the anticipation guide, which is what we have here. There's an image up on the screen. So what we want to do is we want to fill out only this left side column that is highlighted in red. So inside the middle section of the anticipation guide, there are 6 statements that you want to read through. So you want to read each statement and then select whether you agree or disagree with the statement on the left side only. We will be completing the after section after class, but please take 3 minutes to fill out the anticipation guide.
Remember, only use the red indicated on the PowerPoint. So now we are going to be filling out a KWL chart. So I want you to only fill out the know and the want to know columns. Make sure you don't touch the learned, as we were going to touch that on, we're going to work on that later. So I'll give you a few minutes to complete that. Okay, so now we're going to be moving on. So the class objectives for today's lecture, the first is you should be able to learn how to solve equations involving absolute values.
And also, by the end of the day, we will know how to graph these absolute value equations on a coordinate plane.
So now we are going to be going over a review on solving equations. So if we have an equation like 3x minus 2 equals 4, we want to solve for x. So in order to do this, what is the first thing you can do? So number 22. What would you do first? So we need to remember to always, we want to isolate the variables. So therefore we want to get rid of the negative 2. In order to do this, we add 2 to both sides and we get 3x equals 6. From here, again, we want to get x alone. So we divide by 3 and we get x equals 2. So now we're going over a review of the absolute values. So number 10. Can you tell me what this is? So we remember that absolute value is a distance, the distance from 0. So how far is this number from 0? So on a number line, we can put -5, and we'll count how many spaces, how many units to 0. This is a distance, so a distance is always positive. A distance cannot be negative, so the absolute value will always be positive. Therefore, it's 5. Now, when it comes to equations, it's a little different. We read it as the distance between x and 5 is equal to 10. So on a number line, we'll put 5, and we'll count 10 spaces to the right and 10 spaces to the left. This is what the equation is reading above. So we'll count and we'll get -5 and 15. So from -5 to 5, we'll have 10 spaces, 10 units, and from 5 to 15, we'll have 10 units as well. So our answers will be -5 and 15 for this equation above.
Alright, so now we move on to solving absolute value equations using the arithmetic way and not simply just counting using a number line. So when we have equations such as solve for x, of the absolute value of x plus 2 is equal to 6, we want to start off first by splitting the equation into 2. So then we get x plus 2 is equal to 6 and x plus 2 is equal to negative 6. We want to split it into two equations by setting this number to the right equal to the positive value and the negative value. After doing this, we do what Ms. Nava showed you in the review by isolating the variable and leaving x by itself. By subtracting 2 on each of the equations, you get x is equal to 4 and x is equal to negative 8. So now if we look at the equation such as what Ms. Nava did in suggesting the distance, we say the distance between x and negative 2 is 6. So on the number line, we highlight negative 2 and then we count 6 spaces to the right and 6 spaces to the left, and we end up getting the same numbers that we got using that arithmetic way. So 4 and negative 8.
Again, this is easy to do with smaller numbers, but if we have larger numbers, we can't always draw a number line and solve it. Therefore, this different method is much easier for different numbers.
So you can always use this number line way as a check, so you can go back and check your answers for the arithmetic way. Alright, so now for graphing absolute value equations, it's going to be similar to what we had in previous lectures about graphing regular equations, but there's a little twist that's added to the absolute value equations, as we'll see in a few. So here we have our coordinate plane and our equation. Y is equal to the absolute value of x plus 3. So same as the equations, we want to split it into two different equations. X plus 3 when it is less than 0 and x plus 3 when it's greater than 0, or positive and negative. So when we solve for these inequalities, we get x is less than negative 3 and x is greater than negative 3. So then, because this equation on the left will be negative, for any value less than negative 3, we want to add a negative sign in front of the equation. And then we get a new equation, y is equal to negative 3 minus 3. Because this one is positive, we don't change the equation at all, so we just leave it as y is equal to x plus 3. So next thing we want to do is we want to find the x-intercepts. And if we remember, we do this by setting y equal to 0 and solving for x. So we get x is equal to negative 3. So this x-intercept for the negative graph will be x is equal to negative 3. Then we solve for the x-intercept of the positive equation, and we get also x is equal to negative 3. So this point will be a point of interception for both graphs. So then we draw this line here, x is equal to negative 3, because we see that the boundary is x is equal to negative 3 for both. So anything on the left, we'll use this equation, and anything on the right, we'll use this equation. So now, to draw the rest of the graph, we want to find the y-intercepts of each of the graphs. We do this by setting x is equal to 0. So by setting x is equal to 0 to this negative graph, we get y is equal to negative 3, or this point down here. And then by setting x is equal to 0 here, we solve and we get y is equal to 3 here. Alright, so now to draw the graph of each of these equations, we draw a line through the points. So for this green line, the negative line, this left side, we use the point from here to here. And for the right side, we use this point to this point. Alright, so now we have both of the lines of both of our equations. So now how do we do it? Because of this absolute value sign. So remember, when we have absolute value bars, we always think always positive. So what does this mean? That all these values under the y-axis, the x-axis, are not going to be valid because they are not positive, they are negative. So what we do is we select both of the lines that are on the positive side of the graph. So then this highlight in red is the actual graph of y is equal to x plus 3, the absolute value of x plus 3. Okay, class, so now we'll do a practice problem together. So when solving for x for the absolute value of 3x plus 4 is equal to 5, the first thing that we do is number 4. Remember, we have to split the equation into two, setting 1 equal to the positive value and 1 equal to the negative value. Positive 5, negative 5. And then we simply solve for the equations algebraically by isolating the variable. So we get subtract 4 to both sides on each equation, and you get negative 3x is equal to 1 and 3x is equal to negative 9. And the next step would be dividing by 3, and you leave 1/3, and x is equal to negative 3.
So now for classwork, you guys will have a few minutes to complete this worksheet, and then we will go over some. So number 11, what did you get for number 1? Okay, so let's work through it together. We have absolute value of x minus 4 equals 5. Again, we split them up into two separate equations with a 5 and a negative 5. So if we add 4 to both sides on both equations, we will get x equals 9 and x equals negative 1. Did everyone get this? Okay, so let's go over number 4 now. Number 15, what did you get? Okay, so let's work on it. Same thing, we're going to split it into two. One with positive 14 on the right side and one as negative 14 on the left side. From this, we add 6 to both sides in order to isolate the variable like we've reviewed before. And we get negative 5x equals 20 and negative 5x equals negative 8. Again, like we've done before in the past, now we divide by negative 5 both of these equations, and we will get x equals negative 4 and x equals 8 over 5.
Alright, class, so you each have a packet, and each individual packet comes with a different colored construction paper. So you either have a red, blue, green, or orange. So right now, work together. We're going to divide into groups. So go with the other people in the classroom with the same color construction paper as you. There should be 4 different groups of up to 5 students per group. Alright, so now that you have gotten together into groups, on the right here on the screen we have the 4 different equations that we will be graphing. So remember, we want to graph these equations and we only want the positive sides of each of the lines, remember? So you want to split the graphs into 2, and then each of your groups will be graphing in an equation listed here that corresponds to the color of your construction paper. So a red team with red construction paper will be solving for graphing y is equal to the absolute value of x minus 4, and so on for every group. So go ahead and take a couple minutes to complete this assignment. Everyone should draw their graph on the construction paper that was handed out to you individually, even though you are working on it as a group.
Can I have a volunteer from each team to please come up to the board and draw your graph for each problem? After you have done this, you'll have a small discussion on why you got your graph. So, number 7, what did you learn today? Number 2, did you find anything difficult in today's lecture? And number 3, are you still having any trouble understanding something we have covered today? If anyone has any questions, we will be back in class tomorrow if you guys have any questions.
Alright, so now we're going to finish the anticipation guide and the KWL. So go ahead and go back to your worksheets that we handed out in the packet. And now that we have gone over the lecture, the review, and everything that you have learned, now you can fill out the right side column of the anticipation guide or the after. So now, without changing anything in the before column, just add it onto the right side, whether you agree or disagree with the statement that we went over at the beginning. And also for the KWL, fill in the learned column. So you want, now that we have learned all of this information, you want to write down everything that you learned.
Okay, so for a recap, everything that we went over today, we started with a review on absolute value and solving equations, and then we went over and started solving absolute value equations. Then we went over to graph absolute value equations.
All right, so for homework, you're gonna be turning in your KWL anticipation guide to the substitute teacher, and he will in turn give you the homework worksheet. The homework worksheet is very similar to what we used in class, but the problems might be a little bit more challenging and require more thinking and work from you. So make sure you get this completed. This is the worksheet right here attached to the presentation. This will be due tomorrow at the beginning of class, and then we'll discuss the answers once we have collected the worksheet. And again, if you guys have any questions, we will be in class again tomorrow, so keep those in mind. We will also be having tutoring at the end of the school day tomorrow once we get back.
So have a good day, students.